You gotta have knowledge for life. 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 You gotta have
Greetings, brothers and sisters. We're going to go ahead and start up the conference. HIV and AIDS is a very serious issue, and so we did not waste any time, and we got some very serious people to talk about the issue of HIV and AIDS. And so I want you to please give a warm round of applause as we introduce our first presenter, Sis Diana Alexander Jones. Please give her a round of applause.
Good evening. I would just like to give an overview of HIV and AIDS and the difference between the two. I will welcome any questions that you may have about the transmission of this disease, and at any time, if it's something that you do not understand, please feel free to raise your hands and ask questions, because this is an interactive dialogue I would like to have, especially with the community and our young people. AIDS stands for Acquired Immune Deficiency Syndrome. Acquired means the way that you contract the infection. Immune is your body's defense system that is used to fight off germs and infections that attack your body. Deficiency means that there's a defect in your immune system that leaves your body open to germs and infection. Syndrome is a group of the signs and symptoms. And the signs and symptoms of AIDS is like the signs and symptoms of many other diseases. The beginning stages of AIDS is called HIV. And in layman terms, the way I like to describe this is that all of us are human, each and every one of us. All humans have immune systems. Our immune systems are used to fight off germs and infections that attack our body, and viruses. Our bodies, when our immune systems break down and can't fight off germs and infections, we get various types of viruses that attack our immune system. So the beginning stages is called HIV, human immunodeficiency virus, and the end stages is called AIDS, acquired immune deficiency syndrome. Now, the difference is when your body is attacked by a virus that attacks your body or infiltrates your body, our immune system starts to fight it off. We develop antibodies to fight these viruses. The antibodies protect our body from various types of infections. But with the HIV virus, our body protects it for a certain amount of time. Now we have individuals, back when the virus was first established back in the early 80s, people with the virus within 6 months, they had full-blown AIDS, and within 2 years, people died from this disease. But now, with people taking care of themselves, mentally, physically, nutritionally, they are living longer. The medications that they have for the virus, a person who back in the 80s for 6 months had HIV now can have HIV for a number of years and live with AIDS. Now we have individuals living up to 20, 25 years because they have detected that they have this virus, they're taking care of themselves, they're taking their medications, so they're living longer. But if individuals are not tested for HIV and they have certain signs and symptoms, and I must say the signs and symptoms of HIV or AIDS is like the signs and symptoms of many other diseases. And unless you were specifically tested for this virus, you would not know that you had it.
You gotta have knowledge for life. You gotta have knowledge.